Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Four and Fuel podcast, episode 23, and a special one we've got coming up. It is championship weekend for NASCAR going to Phoenix. The Trucks, Xfinity, and Cup Series championships will all be determined this weekend. And 3 series means we got 3 guys on the show today. I'm Dom. We got Steve, and we got Wes. How's it going, fellas?
Well, pretty good, man. I'm excited. We're back championship weekend. This season has really flown by, even with that 10-week break. The season is still just flown by. It's crazy to think we're already at the last week of the season, and now we have to go back to the off season. Pretty sad, but excited for 3 champions to be crowned this week.
Yeah, and one thing too, we're going to see 3 different champions from last year. All the drivers that are in the top 4 for each series competing for the championship this weekend weren't champions last year, so it's going to be a nice little switch up to see some new face get his hand raised for the trophy and a possible victory.
Yeah, it's good to see. It's only a handful of guys that could win their second championship in the series, but like you said, no defending champions returning back. Obviously, Kyle Busch being eliminated in the round of 12. Tyler Reddick not racing in the Xfinity Series to defend his title, and Matt Crafton being eliminated in the round of 8. So I want to start before we get into our championship picks and everything. We just got to talk about Martinsville. I mean, the craziness of Martinsville. We all knew it was going to be crazy ever since they moved Martinsville to the cut line race, the transfer race, elimination race. You know, it was better than I could have expected. The race itself, if you take away that elimination factor, was fantastic. It was one of the best Martinsville races in recent memory. It definitely took away that pain from last year where one guy got out there and really they led over 400 laps, which is just not what you want to see at Martinsville. This year we saw some great Martinsville racing. I'd say the Truck Series was kind of a joke with the way guys were racing and there being a caution every other lap. That was kind of silly. I don't like that kind of racing. Like there's beating and banging, and then there's, just a full-on demolition derby. And that's what that really turned into. The Xfinity race was really fun to watch. Nice to see Harrison Burton get to win, and NBC allowing Jeff Burton to, radio on down to him and, talk to him right as he was doing his burnouts. That was a really cool moment. And then the Cup race, you just take that elimination race away, and the race is great. Chase Elliott, I really wish Martin Truex Jr. didn't have that loose wheel, because I think we could have had a classic battle for the win, because I think Truex, as the race went on, was just as good as Chase Elliott. So I think we would have had a great battle for the win in those final 30 laps. But then you add the elimination factor, and it just provided that last second, game 7, bottom of the 9th moment, and it really didn't let down. Steve, out of this weekend, what do you think you were most impressed with?
Well, I think the most impressive thing was, like you said, the walk-off feeling of Chase Elliott. I know in recent years he's been really close at Martinsville. Going back to 2017, had a chance to go to the championship race and had that incident with Denny Hamlin towards the end of the race. So I think being able for that team, for the 9 team, to be able to close out a race at Martinsville and finally get a win. They've been so close for so many years. I think that was the most impressive thing of the weekend. But like you said, I think it was nice seeing the Xfinity Series back at Martinsville. I think they put on a great show. And the Trucks really, which usually puts on a pretty good show at Martinsville, I think that was probably the least favorable, least watchable, race of the weekend. But I think what the Cup Series is doing with the short track package, I think it's great. It's putting on great racing. And if Steve O'Donnell has half a brain, I think he won't touch his package at the short tracks, but who knows? We still have the mile and a half package, and he refuses to do anything about it. So we'll see. But yeah, I think I think now knowing after the last couple of years that Chase Elliott wasn't in the championship four, but now knowing that they have a shot at the championship going to Phoenix, which they have incredible speed at, has chances to win at Phoenix too. I think it's going to be really fun to watch this weekend.
Yeah, definitely. I just think you said the truck race was least favorable. I totally agree. It's a laughing stock. There's no reason to have, there's like I said, beating and banging, but you just can't have wrecks every other lap, especially with Enfinger. Every time he got passed, like Rafael Lessard gets past him, and then they just like got to slam into him because he's faster, right? It's one thing to race for your season, but there's another, there's some integrity to it, and slamming into guys because they're faster than you. Just, I don't know. That's not racing really. That's really just kind of dirty, and it's really not good. Like a bump and run should be a guy that's, right on the bumper of somebody faster, pressuring them for laps, and then they give him a bump. Lessard was better than Enfinger, and Enfinger just completely just ran into him, slammed into him, did whatever he could, maybe in the last lap or two, but this was for 40 laps. And it's just, I don't know. That's why the truck series is just, I feel like over the years, as we keep getting these younger guys and least lower experienced guys, it's kind of diminished the value or the quality of the racing. When you look 10, 15 years ago, when you've got the Ron Hornadays, the Mike Skinners, the Todd Bodines, Johnny Bensons, the truck series was a premier series. This series was fantastic. And that's because you had experienced veterans on the racetrack. And that's why I almost feel like when you got the Chase Elliott's and the Kyle Bushes in these races, it makes it better to watch. Not because, they're going to win and they're making money for their sponsors. The racing is just genuinely better because they know what they're doing. Not young kids trying to do things that they can't do yet and just overdriving and driving over their heads.
That's what I think was so fun about the summer. Kevin Harvick and was it Marcus Lemonis? You put on that the bounty for Kyle Busch. That's what made people tune into those races during the summer, and seeing Kyle Busch and before Kyle Larson had his scandal, we were going to see Kyle Larson go up head to head with Kyle Busch. And I think we need more of that. I really think I don't want to go as far as saying take the limits off of, how many races a guy can do, but that made for really, really fun moments. And it actually made me want to tune in to watch a truck race now. And going back to Enfinger this weekend at Martinsville, are we seeing a trend of like Thor Sport guys? Because you had Enfinger at Martinsville, we had Rhodes at Texas, Johnny Sauter
every other week.
Every week, Johnny Sauter is running into somebody or, dropping F-bombs left and right on the radio. Mm-hmm. So waiting on something to happen with Matt Crafton, but it always seems to be something with the Thor Sport guys. I don't know what it is.
Hey, and it dates back to the beginning of the year when we had the finish between Jordan Anderson and Grant Enfinger. If you remember the finish, Anderson was holding his line on the outside, and Enfinger just kept driving up the track, doored him a few times, and stayed on him the entire time. It wasn't like it was one hit and he was done. He was real hungry for the win, which I get. But yeah, you're right on that with the Thor Sport guys. Just kind of seem a little out of their element this year. It's a lot different characteristically than we saw from last year. I know Sauter's always been an aggressive guy. Crafton's been a veteran, but I feel like this year in particular, it's been a lot different. Because I feel like the names from them, even though their performances haven't been the best, have been the headlines. So definitely an off year for them. And I'll comment briefly on Martinsville too. It was definitely kind of a mess there in the truck series, but the Xfinity and the Cup series both showed up. Martinsville's always been a great track, no matter kind of really what the package is. But like you mentioned, Steve, I think this package that they've settled with now is really good for the Cup series and also very solid for the Xfinity guys that are up and coming here in the sport. So definitely a good track. I like the placement for Martinsville here being the cutoff race. Now, I don't know what it can mean for in the future because I feel like just the circumstances kind of worked out for the playoffs to be entertaining here as the final race before the championship race. But I definitely think that just with the package alone and also the fact that Martinsville has always been one of the top tier for driver tracks. I think that it's always going to make for an exciting race to get into the championship for, as long as they keep this playoff structure. So I do like the placement, and I thought that was definitely a good move at the beginning of the year. I was curious to see how it played off, and it played off great.
Yeah, I agree with you. With future years, obviously every year you're not going to have it in the Cup Series where you have the last lap where it's down to 1 point between three guys, and those three guys just happen to be the three, wins leaders of the season, and three guys really kind of were shoot in and go to the championship four, and one of them was going to get eliminated. This was almost like that doomsday scenario for Harvick, Hamlin, and Keselowski that people were, saying, imagine if this happens, like go before the round starts, Joey Logano wins at Kansas. All right, there's still 3 more point spots for those guys. They're going to be okay. Kyle Busch wins at Texas. This helps those guys. They're still 25, 27, 42 points above the cut line. But then as that race went on at Martinsville, you just had that feeling like, yeah, Truex or Chase Elliott's going to win this race. So one of these three is going to be out. And I think Denny Hamlin knew there was a strong possibility of that happening. And I think the changing call, like the big change, the move for him was late in that first stage. There was a caution with around 20 to go, I want to say. And Denny Hamlin made the call himself, let's come in and get tires, while Chase Elliott and Martin Truex stayed out. Denny Hamlin then takes those tires, passes those guys, and wins the stage, gets those 10 stage points. Then the next stage gets 8 stage points by finishing third. That leapfrogged him ahead of Harvick, who was struggling the whole race. If you take out that cut tire, I don't think much changes for Kevin Harvick because he was not running in the top 10 regardless. So, yeah, it just kind of made an excuse for him for why they didn't get stage points, but he was running in the mid-20s throughout half of that race, regardless of what was happening. And those stage points propelled Hamlin ahead of him at the time. But then it seemed like as the nighttime rolled, it seemed like Denny Hamlin was fading and Harvick was kind of coming to life, but still not good enough to run inside the top 10. And Keselowski was just good throughout the whole day. And that's another great drive from Keselowski after getting that speeding penalty with under 100 to go and the charge through the field to get back to fourth. That's a championship drive for Keselowski. We haven't seen stuff like that from him since his championship winning season in 2012. And seeing Harvick struggle, it then led to a last lap desperation move, which did not work. Now, as many people would think, this had 2014 Phoenix written all over it, where Jeff Gordon was 1 point to the good. Or no, I think they were tied, and Jeff Gordon had the tiebreaker, and Ryan Newman needed one spot. And Ryan Newman just barrels it on down into turn 3, throws Kyle Larson up into the wall, and gets the spot. That's essentially what Kevin Harvick was trying to do to Kyle Busch. It just didn't work. He caught his left rear off the corner, and it spun both of their cars out. And Harvick had to, he just lost it, hit the wall, didn't cross the finish line, while Kyle Busch just did a 360 and kept going, didn't lose any positions. And I actually watched a thing Kyle Busch did today. He was on the Kyle Long show, and Kyle Long asked him about it. And Kyle Busch was like, well, I knew I had to stay ahead of Harvick to keep Denny in the championship 4. And Kyle Busch kind of surprised Harvick by going high in 3. So, because if he goes low, Kevin Harvick's thought would just be, I'm just going to ram the back of him and throw him up at the racetrack. But Kyle Busch goes high, so it makes it harder for Harvick to do anything. And then Kyle Busch was like, I'm going to put him in a position where he's got to try to wreck me or move me where Kyle Busch doesn't wreck. Because if Kyle Busch wrecks and doesn't get to the finish line, it does nothing for Kevin Harvick because Denny Hamlin then passes Kyle Busch, and that position is just null and void, and it's the same scenario. So it's crazy how Kyle Busch was thinking about all of that in the situation when the situation doesn't even put any pressure on him. So it's just, interesting to see that situation. And now people are in outroar on the system, the format. Wes, do you think the format needs to change because Kevin Harvick didn't make the championship 4?
I mean, it's such a tough question to answer because the way that this format's structured, it kind of takes into account the performances that you have the first part of the year, which is the regular season, but then it also kind of balances out to where you have to perform the last 10 races. So it's tough because unfortunately it came down to the fact that Kevin Harvick didn't really show up when he needed to. I'm not saying he didn't show up in this round because he was strong at Texas for the first 50 laps of the race before he hit the wall. He was strong as Kansas, but couldn't pass because the package just kind of nullified any attempt to try to get around Joey Logano. And he came back and did fair, but he just didn't perform the team overall where he needed to. So I don't know. I've always been a fan of just the old school stuff. I mean, that's kind of what I grew up on when I first started watching when I was a kid. And of course, I didn't really know any better, but I felt like even still kind of looking back, like it just kind of reminds me of what I used to watch when I was a kid. So I kind of like the old school, just take into account the entire season. And even looking back, I really didn't mind the championships that we saw from 2004 to however long it lasted with just 10 drivers race the last 10 races because it still kind of took into account, well, until they added victories being a factor, but well, I guess they did, but they just performed the last 10 races. Then you kind of look at it as that kind of being the last third that you have to show up in. So I really didn't mind that either. And there's things that they could probably play around with, but I don't know. I don't know if I have really any issue with it because it definitely adds a nice entertainment value for us. And the racing itself seems to be amplified too with the way that the stages and the especially this year at least with the structure of the races that kind of lead into the next round. So I don't know. It's up for debate. I think everybody's going to have different opinions on it, but honestly, I think it's fine. It just depends. You just have to show up when you need to, pretty much.
Yeah, just I saw some silly thoughts of people saying, well, what if they just gave the number 1 seed a championship 4 berth?
No.
And like, let's just give the guy that just happened to win the most races in regular season, let's just give him, well, not if he led the points after 26 races, let's give him 9 bye weeks. And he could just go out there and putz around for 9 weeks and then just be ready for the championship race. That's just insane. They still got to earn it. Kevin Harvick just happened to have 2 of his worst races at the worst time. And it's what happens. That's just a part of racing. It's a part of sports. And Harvick had a big enough advantage anyway, being the regular season champion, all those wins, all those stage wins. He was still 42 points to the good going into Martinsville. It just happened to be that he didn't make it.
So, and if you look at it too, just neither did Hamlin, the 2 most dominant cars of the season. Neither one of them really showed up at all. Mm-hmm. Pretty much. I mean, of course they were up front at times in the playoffs, but the playoffs have really kind of been I feel like kind of the face of the guys like Chase Elliott. Even Joey Logano has been top 5 almost every single week. I feel like we've talked about them more with their successes than we've talked about the 2 guys that dominated the first 2/3 of the season. So definitely not. I feel like I don't know what it could be, preparation for Phoenix or what, or just change of the tides because we're late here in the season and we're seeing other guys show up that know it's game time. So I don't know. It's just you got to show up when it counts. And these 2, they both put it on the line, and circumstances just didn't work out for Kevin Harvick.
And I know that a lot of people hate this comparison, but I feel like it's the easiest comparison. You know, the New England Patriots, you know, went 16-0 and got all the way to the Super Bowl and then still lost. And if they go 16-0, or if a team, gets a number one seed in the NFL, you can't just give them an automatic ride to the championship. You can't give them an automatic Super Bowl berth, because then, what's the point of even having the playoffs at that point? And, you could even look at the Patriots playoff game from last year. They were at home, I would arguably say heavily favored against the Titans, and they lost at home, which you rarely saw. But the Patriots were just lacking. The Titans played better, and this is why we have the playoffs. So I think, and I agree with Wes, I think the initial chase format that we had, where if we were to just take out the eliminations, and if you wanted to keep the same system, but let's just not have guys be eliminated. Let's have the 16 guys for this entire week have a chance at the championship. So for these 10 weeks, all 16 guys have a shot at the championship, and then, just whoever goes in to the last race with a shot at the championship, is going to get it. But to have one bad round and then to basically not be rewarded for your 9-win season, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Whereas, if Harvick had a 42-point cushion and had these couple bad races, but still went into Phoenix with a shot to win the championship, I think that just it makes more sense to me, I guess.
Well, even if you look at those formats, under any chase format, Kevin Harvick is fourth at best.
Yeah.
So he does, and he's a full race behind. And actually, it's Chase Elliott that leads most of those formats, and really is running away with the championship in any format outside of just full season points. So if you throw any chase format out there, Kevin Harvick still hasn't, showed up in the chase outside of the first round. That's really the only round he showed up. He got lackadaisical in the second round and was lackadaisical in this round, and it showed. And that's why there's just no guarantees in sports. You've got to show up when it matters, no matter what seed you are, how many points you are to the good. I'm telling you, it's a team effort. Like Joey Logano's only chance to win Kansas was his pit crew getting him out ahead of Harvick, and that's what they did. And Logano just took advantage of the package and did what he had to do to win that race, because he got out ahead of Harvick on pit road. So the 4 teams should have stepped up then. Then at Texas, yes, it's kind of unfortunate. He was leading, first one leading into a damp racetrack. It's unfortunate. But then at Martinsville, you got to run better than 20th. You put yourself in danger of cutting tires down when you're running back there with damaged race cars like Matt Kenseth this year. You just put yourself in that position to get a tire cut down. That's why Denny Hamlin fell back so quickly on that last run. He was afraid of getting his left rear tire cut down because he was racing hard with the guys and teammates of Kevin Harvick. He didn't want them to slip up into him and cut his tire down. So it's the formats, you can't base the format because of Harvick. If you came into this and be like, oh, I don't like this format, then that's fine. It's your opinion. You can't change your opinion on the format just because one guy didn't make the championship 4, because it would have been a lot harder for Harvick to make it the championship 4 anyways if, say, Martin Truex Jr. would have won at Texas, because then he would have had 3 winners from below the cut line, and that meant that 2 of the guys that should have made it weren't going to make it: Denny Hamlin, Kevin Harvick, Brad Keselowski. So they'll know that for next year. Just because you win the most races doesn't mean you're going to win the championship. It's happened even under a normal point system where you run all 36 races and no chase or anything. It's happened. Jeff Gordon's had it happen. He won 10 races in 96, didn't win the championship. I think Bill Elliott won 11 races one year. I think it was him that won 11 races one year, didn't win the championship. So
I think it creates a lot of excitement, though. like Brad Keselowski said a couple years ago, it's an entertainment sport, not a fair sport. But, you know, you go back and if we were to take away all the stage points, all the bonus points for winning this, that, and the other, you know, now you could have, if a guy just is consistent all year, you know, could point his way to a championship by like Texas, you know, and then you'd run the last 2 races and you already know who the champion is, and that drives ratings down. And so this is what NASCAR feels like they have to do to keep the ratings up, to keep the suspense going. You know, you're in these little 3 race rounds, and that's what's going to keep people glued to the screen, is that they have to know that their guy is moving on to the next round, and it's, you know, what he has to do, what kind of walk-off scenario do they have to do to make the championship race. And so that's all it is. It's a ratings game, and yeah, that's all.
Granted, you're not going to get that every year. There's no way you're going to have three of the top guys all season fighting for 2 spots at the end of Martinsville on the last time. It's just not going to happen every year. There's going to be years whereby the final lap, you know what the championship 4 is going to be. It's not going to come down to the last corner every time with the number 1 guy all season having to throw a desperation move on another guy's teammate that you're battling to try to get in. It's just not going to happen every year. It just happened to work out like that this year. So the last time we really saw something like that was 2014, the first year of the system. So it could be years before we see another moment like that. And really, we haven't seen anything crazy in the championship race except 2016. But now, being at Phoenix, it could change the whole ball game, especially with a late race restart. With how wide the track is on the front stretch, we don't know. But speaking of championships in Phoenix, I want to start out with the Truck Series. So, Championship 4, you got Sheldon Creed, Grant Enfinger, Brett Moffatt, and Zane Smith. So it's almost like last year in the Cup Series. You got those 3 GMS Chevys against 1 Ford and ThorSport. So, Wes, I'm going to give you the first pick. Granted, we could pick what you pick. We didn't look at each other's notes or anything. Don't know who you're picking, but who's got the nod to win the truck championship?
I haven't really thought about it too much. I'm definitely looking forward to the Truck Series, especially when they come to Phoenix. I feel like the Truck Series is definitely always, I don't know, something about it. I feel like they've had some of the most exciting Phoenix races from what I remember in previous years, especially when we get down to this crunch time late in the season, because it used to be the second to last race, and it was always pretty intense for a cutoff race. We've seen like Noah Gragson and Christopher Bell get into it before. We've seen Christopher Bell lose the championship before that way. And then I can think back, we've seen some crazy last lap and crazy restarts there on the front stretch that have cost drivers pretty much a chance to get into the championship. So I think I think it's going to come down to, I said about a month ago that I thought Sheldon Creed wouldn't make it. I thought his inconsistency wouldn't get him there, but he's been very consistent, at least performance-wise, being a upfront contender. And I think that GMS is going to be kind of the squad to beat here. I think that Grant Enfinger, he's got a chance, but I think the GMS team is going to be on point as they've been most of the year. And they've been 3 of the fastest guys pretty much the entire season, despite not really having, besides Sheldon Creed, at least Zane and Brett only having 3 combined wins. Brett having 1 of those, and then Zane having the other 2. But they've been super quick and super dominant despite that. So I think for the Truck Series, I'm leaning Brett Moffatt, and it's because he's the guy that is a former champion in the series. You look at the other 3. They've not really had the opportunity to come down when it's been crunch time in a situation like this. And Brett's the most experienced guy of the 3, despite Enfinger running a lot longer in his career, dating back on the ARCA series. I think that Brett's going to be the guy to maybe not get a victory because there's going to be a lot of fast guys. And we haven't seen him with the winning speed, but I think that with his prior championship a couple years ago. I think that mentality is going to be able to get him a second championship and maybe his second victory of the season.
All right. So we got Brett Moffatt, Steve.
Yeah, Wes took like almost exactly every point that I was going to make about Moffatt. So
we're going 2-0 for Brett Moffatt.
No, I think since he took all my points for Brett Moffatt, I'll go Sheldon Creed. I think he's really shown to be the best GMS driver as of recently, at least. Ever since really the Daytona Road Course where he won there, I think he's really been even just the fastest truck to be in the entire field.
And not only that, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I wanted to say too, out of every driver in every series, I've never seen a driver improve as much as Sheldon Creed has in the span of 1 year. I know he's been aggressive at times this year that people haven't really been a big fan of, but the improvements that he's made, I don't know if it's been a team effort or what, but Sheldon Creed is on a completely another level from where he was this time last year. So it's just incredible to see what he's been able to accomplish.
Absolutely, because like last year, he was pretty irrelevant most of the year. We would really struggle to get top tens, but now it's hard not to see him up front. I mean, he's winning stages left and right, and has a few wins on the year. So I think just with that, with him being so consistent, really anywhere we go, and Moffatt is up and down, but normally running about top 5. Zane Smith top 5 at times. And then Grant Enfinger, you never know what you're going to get out of Grant Enfinger, whether it's going to be a top 5 or struggling to get top 20. So you can never really count on Grant Enfinger to give you a consistent finish. And I think I don't think it's enough to overcome GMS. And just out of the GMS guys, I think Sheldon Creed has shown the most speed out of them. I think, like Wes said, the most improvement. And I think he is just kind of put together like the complete package season, and I think he caps it off with a championship.
Well, took 2 GMS guys, and I'm going to take the odd man out. I think I'm going to take Grant Enfinger. Grant Enfinger, there's only really one track you can compare to Phoenix that the trucks have run this year. That was Richmond, and Grant Enfinger won that race. He looked really good. Actually, ThorSport finished 1, 2, 3. So I think ThorSport's got a handle of these kind of short tracks. Grant Enfinger winning Martinsville, granted, he didn't have the best car, but he was able to win the race. And Grant Enfinger has been really good at Phoenix in the past. So I think Grant Enfinger is going to win. I think the GMS guys may get in their own heads. They may not focus on one truck enough. I mean, all ThorSports can go all hands on deck on that 98 truck. So I think Grant Enfinger is going to win the race and win the championship. I think Grant Enfinger scores the championship and ThorSport goes back to back. So now we go up to the Xfinity Series where the championship 4, we've got Chase Briscoe, Justin Allgaier, Justin Haley, and Austin Cindric. I'll go first this time. We'll reverse the order. I just think it's Chase Briscoe's year. He's done a lot. And it would be hard for me to not see Chase Briscoe not winning the race when it matters. He's been the best driver at all types of tracks this year. And I don't think Phoenix is going to be any different. Now, if Brandon Jones was in the championship 4, I may have to pick him because he won Phoenix earlier this year. But with no Brandon Jones in the way, Justin Allgaier does have an argument. He's really good at Phoenix, arguably his best track in the Xfinity Series. But I just think Briscoe, with all the experience and all these wins and all the confidence he comes in with, he finished 6th there in the spring. I think he's a lot better driver than he was in the spring. And he's got all that momentum, all that mojo going to the 14 next year in the Cup Series. He definitely wants to cap it off with these guys because he even said, this might be the last race he works with a lot of these guys on that team. So he's going to have a lot to prove, and he wants to leave a champion.
It's interesting. You make great points, though, and this easily could be Chase Briscoe's year. However, it's not going to be. Unfortunately, it is going to be Justin Allgaier's year. Finally, going to get an Xfinity championship.
Will he do something Elliott Sadler could not do?
Man, don't. You're gonna make me cry thinking of Elliott Sadler. No, this Phoenix is Justin Allgaier's track. I think going into the playoffs, if Allgaier knew that he could just have a shot at getting to Phoenix, that he would have a legitimate chance at a championship. And Homestead was never really Justin Allgaier's track. He really struggles there, but he is really good at Phoenix. Has a win there a couple years ago, and I think had a chance to win the race in the spring this year, and then had an issue late in the race. So I think the stars are just going to align, and this is going to be Justin Allgaier's year, but it's going to be an uphill battle because, trying to battle Cindric and Briscoe. Haley, I don't think is going to have that good of a run there, but I think it's just going to be hard to beat Cindric and Briscoe. But as long as you don't make mistakes on yourself, I think Justin Allgaier will have a real shot.
I think that's definitely my feel-good story. Allgaier's been around so long, and it's been close so many times to not only championships, but so many more victories. I mean, he could have at least 25 or 30 victories under his name, but unfortunately, he's been struck with a lot of bad luck throughout his career. But this is definitely a good time for Allgaier to get it done. But I have been leaning actually towards Cindric, and I felt that this season kind of reminded me of Tony Stewart. We saw Tony Stewart win the Cup championship back in 2005. He had that real dominant middle portion of the year, and then was super consistent the second half, or at least the closing part of the year. And I feel like Cindric is a guy that he does really well at driver tracks, where it takes a lot of just kind of driver mentality to be able to get the job done. And this is definitely one of them. Now, he doesn't have a victory. I think that Allgaier is probably actually going to be the biggest threat to win the race, just because of his dominance at Phoenix. I think Briscoe is definitely going to be hungry because he had such a dominant year. But as we saw in the situations with Kevin Harvick, not always the dominant guy is going to be able to get the job done. So even with the year like those two have had, I think that it could come down to Cindric. I know that he hasn't really – his only victories have actually really come at road courses. He's got a few ovals, but he hasn't got a short track victory yet throughout his career. And I think that even though this really isn't a short track, but it is kind of to a degree, I think this is going to be the chance where he steps up and proves himself, because he's got to prove himself too for Penske, because he's going into his last year. If he can get back-to-back championships and then step up in the Cup Series, that's going to be a good look for him. I think he's definitely motivated, just like all the other guys are, but I think he has a good chance to get the job done.
Now I say winning the race, watch out Riley Herbst. Riley Herbst said after the Roval that he was guaranteeing a win before the season was over. So Riley Herbst might go into Phoenix and maybe go. It's a nice farewell win at Gibbs, as it's been rumored that he won't be at Gibbs next year. He might be in the 98 replacing Chase Briscoe.
Yeah.
Hopefully they invert the top 15 results, and maybe he's got a chance to win.
He'll win first to the garage.
Whoa.
Now, I don't know if Joe Nemechek's starting, but I think he's been known for that in the past 10 years.
Well, Wes, you get to kick us off. Championship 4 for the Cup Series. You've got Joey Logano, Chase Elliott, Brad Keselowski, and Denny Hamlin. No Kevin Harvick to pick.
I know this is Kevin Harvick's racetrack, and he's not going to be there. Now, I actually do think
he'll be there. I mean, Kevin Harvick will be at the racetrack.
Yeah.
He'll be there.
He won't. I guess he won't be in a championship. And honestly, Harvick could go out there. He's going to be the one that probably wants to win it the most. I mean, the guy that got knocked out that had the best chance to win the championship all year, I think he's going to be the guy to beat this weekend when it comes to the victory standpoint, especially because he's so good there. This is arguably his best track. But I've just had a weird feeling. I think I mentioned it at one point to both of you, that just the way that this season's lined up, and I've had this feeling that Joey Logano is going to be the guy to get the championship. A part of it is because if you look at the 4 that are in the championship at the moment, Logano's the only guy that's been in the situation that was able to get the job done. Brad Keselowski, he did win a championship, but it was with a completely different format. Denny Hamlin's come close twice in his career, very, very close. But we've seen mistakes on a variety of his part. And Chase Elliott's still a young guy. I think that he's got a bright future ahead of him. But I'm not sure that this is going to be the race he can get it done. Now, I do think that they all have a great chance. This really could come down to anybody. No matter what we say, all 4 of them are going to be at the front of the field battling when it comes down to the end of this thing. So, but I feel like Logano in situations like this, he's been one of the guys to be able to just grasp it and be able to capitalize a little bit more than the others. So I think for those reasons, that's one reason why I've leaned Logano. It would be great to see a guy like Hamlin or Elliott win their first championship, or for Keselowski to get back to his form with the run that he's had in the playoffs and the season that he's had, because it's been underrated but very consistent and also very impressive, because we've seen him be up front for quite a bit of these races. Just they haven't talked about him as much as you'd expect. But I think that having 2 Penske cars on the field, well, 3 and then technically a 4th, you know what I mean, 2 here in the championship, I think that Logano's just knowledge of what to do in these situations, and the team as a whole can definitely step up, because this also does kind of feel like the championship that he won a couple years ago, where he started strong, it was really quiet in the middle, and then it came on strong at the end. And I feel like that this is what we're about to see with Joey. So he's actually my pick to win the championship, and not to win the race. I think Harvick gets done the race. Yeah, y'all have your picks. One of you two can probably go first with race picks, but I do think that Harvick will win the actual race.
Man, this is it's exciting. I've been waiting for this moment because I wanted to be the first to tell you that Chase Elliott's going to win the championship, and there might be a little bias behind that, but
I knew you two would be biased, so I was like, I don't want to steal it.
Yeah,
I don't want to steal your light.
I think it is going to be it is a real toss up because Keselowski's always really fast in Phoenix. Logano won there in the spring. Hamlin won there last year. Chase Elliott's been really close, has not closed the deal on Phoenix yet. I just have this gut, like my brain is telling me to go with Denny Hamlin. Like if we're crunching numbers and we're looking at the stats and this, that, and the other, but I just have this gut feeling, and I'm sorry, Dom, I feel like something is going to go wrong. It's not a NASCAR race without Denny Hamlin speeding at least once during the race, and that could be a last – green flag run or something. That's just my gut feeling. But really looking at it, I feel like now that Chase Elliott knows that he has a chance for the championship, and he didn't get eliminated in the round of 8, and he's just came off of this big walk-off win. He's walking into Phoenix with a whole bunch of swagger, and I just feel like it's going to be so hard to beat that 9 team, and if they can just put all the components together and not make any mistakes on pit road, and Alan Gustafson makes good calls and good adjustments. And I think it's time. It's time for Chase Elliott to win a championship. So I'm rolling with the 9 car. He's been my guy for his entire career. So I hope that, knock on wood, I hope it's not jinx now. But yeah, I'm rolling Chase Elliott for Sunday.
Well, you're both wrong. I mean, you're wrong. It's not going to happen. The champion on Sunday will be Brad Keselowski. Brad Keselowski is winning the championship. I think he dominates the race. Keselowski goes out there and just smokes the field. This has been his type of track this season under this high horsepower, low downforce package. They're bringing the same car he dominated at Loudon and Richmond with, and no one's been able to touch it. Nobody has been able to handle Brad Keselowski on these type of tracks, and Keselowski will lead over 200 laps, make it a snooze fest for everybody, and he'll be hoisting number 2 and joining Kyle Busch as the only multi-time champion in the field starting next year, because Jimmy Johnson will no longer be in the field. So, and with the Gibbs, with Hamlin, it's hard to pick him. It's just he hasn't proven he could do it. You go back to last year at Phoenix, he did win that race, but it was under a completely different aero package, completely different. So all of that you got to throw out the window. It just doesn't matter. Yes, Hamlin has been able to kind of keep up with Keselowski. He's been the second best, I'd say, in these races, but that Martinsville run is not too encouraging. That's still a high horsepower, low downforce race, and Hamlin struggled at one of his best tracks. So they said they built a new car for Hamlin. They said they've had all hands on deck at Joe Gibbs Racing on there. As long as Chris Gale isn't touching the car, maybe it's got a shot. But I just don't see it. I think you got to throw the numbers out, except for the numbers from this year. You can't go back to previous years, and Brad Keselowski is just on fire. I think he's the lead dog, and he's the favorite. And most of the time, the favorite kind of usually gets away with it here and wins these championships. So Brad Keselowski will match his car number in championships on Sunday. Keselowski leads over 200 laps, wins the championship, puts the rest of the field to sleep. I would have picked Keselowski even if Harvick made it and Keselowski was in there. I would have picked not Harvick. I would have picked Keselowski either way. If Keselowski made it, he's the favorite. So,
hey, you know, if he wins that championship, old Keselowski, he's going to have a great time. If there's anybody besides Clint Boyer that knows how to party, especially if he wins a championship, come on, it's Brad Keselowski.
Yeah, that'll be a fun sight to see. Hopefully they can get him his big mug for Miller Lite, even though he doesn't really get Miller Lite that much. He's sponsored by Discount Tire for this race, so I don't think he can drink out of a tire. It's kind of weird.
I don't know. It's like a shoey, like what the Australians do. Where they drink the beer out of a shoe. Some are made out of rubber. So I don't know. He can make it work.
But Steve, you brought up I want to bring up that point you said about pit road. Pit road is going to be crucial. Yeah. I mean, making the right call. We saw last year at the end of the Phoenix race in the fall where Denny Hamlin took 2 tires and Ryan Blaney took 2 tires. Steve Letarte almost had a stroke because Denny Hamlin took 2 tires.
Yeah.
But Denny Hamlin was able to hold him off. So we could see something like that. If we get a late race caution, do you come in for tires? Do you come and you stay out? This is really the first time in a championship race where we could see tire strategy, because Homestead, it's just caution. Give me 4 tires. Give me 4 tires.
Yep.
But Phoenix is a different game. And
something, I went back and I watched the end of the races from 2014 up until last year, and something always, you look at Logano in 14 had the car come off the jack, and then you go to 2016 at that late race caution, and then Carl Edwards blocks, and there's a big wreck, and then so I mean, so many things can happen. Could come down to a loose lug nut or anything. Anything can happen, and that's what it's what's going to keep me on the edge of the seat this weekend.
I mean, last year alone in that championship race.
Yeah.
When have you ever seen a team switch the tires? When do you see the teams put on the wrong tires for the wrong side? When do you see a team put the left sides on the right and the right sides on the left? It just doesn't happen.
Yeah. And then or put a piece of Bear Bond the size of the moon on Denny Hamlin's car.
It's just, you just don't see that happen unless you're being aggressive. Well, the tires isn't even being aggressive. That is just a mental collapse. That is just, I don't know how to explain that. The tape is just being really aggressive, trying to get as much speed as you can as it cools down. But I don't know. You see awkward stuff in championship races to these guys, stuff you wouldn't even think of. I mean, for all we know, there's no practice. So these guys can unload the car and the car might just not start on the grid.
Yeah.
And then what do you do?
Denny Hamlin might go to flick the switch and nothing happens. The car just doesn't start. I mean, we saw it last week. They left the travel packer on the left rear. It's just stupid stuff like that could happen. It takes one piece of debris to hit and you blow a right front tire. I mean, it's just anything that can happen will happen. You got to run a perfect race. That's what got Kyle Busch the championship last year. I think Truex and Hamlin were better. They just shot themselves in the foot. Kyle Busch had a clean race and that's what won the championship. That's what it might come down to this week. I think we're going to have a late race restart. Will Joey Logano send it 4 wide if need be?
Absolutely.
And you got to think too, just throughout the course of this race, like even though they're starting up front, there's going to be guys like I had mentioned, Kevin Harvick. He's going to be a factor to want to win. But if some of these guys get in front and we see a restart late that aren't in the championship and they're ahead of some of the championship guys and they take it 3 or 4 wide down on the corner, you're going to be the guy that's in the championship is going to be at a very, very big risk because we've got guys up in the first turn 4 wide and he's sitting back 5 cars behind him. And then they start wrecking. What do you do? So it makes it tough too. The spatial awareness you're going to be having to deal with because you've got so many different lane options to pick from. Late race restarts. I mean, no driver is just going to take it easy. They're going to want as much real estate as they can get. So
don't forget the choose cone as well.
Yeah, first ever championship race with the choose rule. So,
and another thing
go ahead.
Yeah, I just had one more thing. If you think about it. Of course, they're going to be really focused on winning this championship and the pressure is going to be on, but they do have that rule, and this is just something I thought of, where you can't go down on the apron until you pass the line. Where the yellow line meets the finish line, you can't go on the apron. So we could easily see one of the championship guys make a mistake and cross over that line on maybe a late race restart, and it causes a whole realm of controversy. And not only that, but costs them a chance maybe even of the championship, or maybe they win the championship and they went below the yellow line and then who knows what to do. So that's another factor that we haven't even talked about. I don't think anybody's mentioned that it might be a very, very critical factor in the outcome of this race.
And it's actually very surprising, but if you look at any track where you see black flags for jumping the initial start, Phoenix seems to lend itself to penalties on that. I think Chase Elliott had it happen to him once where he jumped the start. He beat the leader to the start finish line at the initial start and had a drive-through penalty to start the race. Now, Chase Elliott's going to be on the pole, so I don't think that'll happen to him, but I think it's Logano who's second. So what if Joey Logano jumps the start? You put yourself already behind the 8 ball to start the race. You take your second place starting spot and go down pit road for drive-through. And that choose rule, I remember bringing up this scenario like way back when they introduced the choose rule. And I said, well, could you imagine if you got both Penske cars in and then you get Ryan Blaney up towards the front, towards the end of the race, where the Penske guys pick one lane and then Ryan Blaney leads the other lane and just kind of intentionally spins his tires, like just doesn't get going and stacks up the line with championship contenders behind him. Say Hamlin restarts 4th behind Blaney on the outside. And so could we see team orders on choose rule? Could we see that?
If you think about it too, we've got 3 Hendrick drivers to help out Chase Elliott, and we've got 3 Gibbs guys to help out Denny Hamlin. So the fact that we've got, right there, just alone, I guess, just quite a bit. What is it? 7 drivers, or that could help influence the finish of this race because of the choose cone. Yeah. And it's gonna be pretty crazy if it comes down to something like that to decide it too. So a lot of different variables to have to deal with when it comes to this racetrack. This actually could play out a lot better than we think.
Yeah, there's so many unknowns, so many variables to this race. That's why the champion is going to earn this race. They're going to earn it. And they're going to have to put together a clean race. That's literally, if you put yourself in that position where you have a clean race, you've got a good shot. Because all 4 of them aren't going to have clean races. It's just not going to happen. We've seen the struggles out of the 9 crew. We've seen struggles out of Denny Hamlin on pit road himself. We've seen Denny Hamlin maybe sometimes put himself in bad spots. He wrecked in the spring. Keselowski and Hamlin wrecked in the spring. We don't even know what their full potential is. So that's just the part of the unknown and no practice for this. So yeah, if the team goes out there and just misses the setup, then you're in for a long day, because there's only so much you could do with wedge, track bar, air pressure, and packer and rubber adjustments. It's just, there's only so much you could do to try to help the car. And relatively, it's not going to turn in the night. It usually doesn't. And it's just going to be a fun race. I think it's going to prove to be a better finale than Homestead. I think it'll definitely be closer, because usually at Homestead, you know who the champion is with like 10 to go. So I think it's going to be a great race. I'm excited for it. No matter who the champion is, they'll definitely deserve it under the format. They'll definitely earn their spot in the championship for, whether it was because they won races or pointed their way in. Obviously, Harvick, we think would be in there, but he isn't. Maybe he'll get his 10th win on Sunday. But, if that's it for us, if you guys are good, that'll be episode 23. And hopefully we'll be back next week to recap the championships for episode 24. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.